So season 1 of Invincible is done, and I think it was pretty good. This show kind of surprised me because I've been semi-familiar with the comic before, and the show just kind of didn't look like anything special, just based on like the trailers and stuff. But hoo boy was I wrong. Oh, and by the way, this video has spoilers because you can't really talk about anything past episode 1 without spoiling stuff. So anyway, Invincible is about a young lad named Mark, who's the son of a superhero, and as he develops his new powers, he deals with superhero life while balancing his teenage lifestyle. And if this sounds pretty basic and familiar, that's on purpose. This series is all about taking standard superhero tropes and flipping them. On his first day being a superhero without any help from anybody else, he gets fucked up and can't really save any lives. Meanwhile, college is something that he can't even really consider as an option because of how busy he is as a superhero. Oh, and not to mention, his superheroic dad is a genocidal planet-conquering lunatic. The idea here is that you can't really predict where the show's gonna go just based on what you expect from a superhero story. The show likes playing with your expectations. I mean, the show is called Invincible, but when the title card drops, the screen gets bloodier and gorier with each episode. And like, the character's name is Invincible, but as anybody who watches the show knows, he gets fucking swamped every time he fights anybody. It's a bright, colorful superhero show, like something that you'd see on Cartoon Network, but there's a lot of swearing, characters are usually talking about, like, sex and stuff, and also it's like the most violent show that I've seen in a really long time. A lot of people are comparing this show to The Boys, and I think that's a little reductive, but I can see the similarities. And this show actually manages to be more violent than The Boys somehow, if only for the fact that it's animated and you can show a lot more wacky shit in an animated series. But I feel like this show isn't really trying to shock you as much as The Boys is. The Boys is a lot about social commentary, while this is more about interpersonal relationships. And personally, that's the kind of stuff that I latch on to a little bit better. I think all this stuff works in this show. It doesn't feel like the show is trying to subvert expectations for the sake of it. A lot of episodes don't really have a lot of superhero action, and instead they deal with just human problems. It feels like a lot of elements in this story are genuinely intriguing, even if they aren't always crazy and exciting. For instance, I really like the subplot about Mark's mom coming to terms with the fact that her husband may not be what she thought he was, and that he may not really care about her at all. There's a lot of stuff in this show that I'm very excited to see explored in later seasons. And overall, I think this story worked really well for me. There's a lot to latch onto, and in my opinion, it's made even better by the performances. This show has some all-star talent from J.K. Simmons and Sandra Oh, and it really shows when you get professional actors in your cartoon superhero show. It kind of elevates it to like the next level. I think the best performance definitely comes from Steven Yeun as Mark. He portrays Mark perfectly as this idealist that's in way over his head. And it's good that the performances are great because it can distract you from how janky the show looks sometimes. This show is really trying its best to do what it can with the budget that it has, but I feel like most of the budget definitely went towards the all-star cast. Some episodes are on the same animation level as a Newgrounds video. Now, to be honest, I gave this a pass most of the time because I know the animators probably did their best with what they had, and it will most likely get better in later seasons. But another critique I have is that by starting the series with such a large plot development in the first episode, the show kind of struggled to hook me with some of the smaller plot lines. Like, the Omni-Man stuff is very interesting. All the stuff in the story that has to do with Mark and his family is kind of like the core of the show. And it culminates really well into the last 2 episodes, which are basically a mad dash to find out how the fuck we can deal with Omni-Man, all while wondering if Mark even has a chance of surviving a fight with him. But meanwhile, we have the robot and clone subplot, which takes up a good chunk of the show and is kind of unengaging. It feels kind of useless, and it has really bizarre implications that are only briefly addressed before we have to focus on the real story. And also, for a show that's good at subverting superhero tropes, I feel like the superhero trying to balance saving lives with his love life is kind of a tedious and worn-out story. Like, we've all seen this done exactly the same way in thousands of superhero stories, and this one doesn't really change it enough for it to be interesting. And it doesn't help that Mark's girlfriend in this season has like the most inconsistent writing out of like any character. For instance, if she knew that he was a superhero the whole time, why the fuck did she react so unreasonably when he left the group to save them at the college campus? She's like pissed off at him for saving their lives. There are a lot of times where she gets mad at him in ways that don't really make a lot of sense. These storylines take up a good chunk of the show, and I don't know, they just weren't as compelling as some of the other stuff in this season. But luckily, I would say that the good stuff heavily outweighs the bad. You can tell that this show is still finding its footing, and the fact that it still manages to be a really fun and refreshing show is pretty impressive. But anyway, that's all I have to say about this show for now. This is an actual quickie. I mean, the writing is pretty good, the performances are really good, the animation leaves something to be desired, but overall, I think that this is a solid show, and I think anybody could enjoy it, as long as you don't really mind violence and gore. I'll probably have more to say about this show as more seasons come out, but for now, I think this is a pretty good start for the series. So I'm going to give Invincible Season 1 an 8 out of 10.